This is the VIP Podcast, Virginia in Politics. Let's listen to host Chris Saxman explore the personalities and policies that connect the Commonwealth. The VIP Podcast is brought to you by the VCTA, Broadband Association of Virginia, and Virginia Free. The views and opinions expressed here do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the VCTA and Virginia Free or our sponsors.
All right, good morning. This is Chris Saxman on the VIP Podcast, brought to you by VCTA, the Broadband Association of Virginia and Virginia Free, of which I am the Executive Director. I'm Chris Saxman. I served in the House of Delegates for 8 years, and people keep asking me, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep coming back and talking about politics? Well, quite frankly, the answer is I was a teacher early in my life, and I love politics. I love American history, and I love our system of government. And for the longest time, I've been attracted to it because I think we can get a lot of things done. But as most people have come to understand about our society these days, frankly, we're not doing it well, and we need to get better at it. So what my job is to engage the political leaders of the day with the business leaders of the Commonwealth and bring them together to engage each other, to learn and understand from each other so we can make our society more prosperous, more safe, beneficial to all. And what we've seen lately is a continual erosion of the civility. We've become more and more like Washington, D.C., and we need to push back on that construct. It's very dangerous to the health of the country because we are Virginia, and we have a very special obligation here in Virginia to do it right. And joining me this morning on the program of the VIP Podcast is our newest VIP, Delegate Chris Head.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep running for the House of Delegates, and now you're going to run for the state Senate?
I'm going to run for the state Senate. It's much like you said. I really am interested in trying to get things done the right way. And I was thinking back as I was sitting down with you here. You and I have known each other now for like close to 20 years, if not maybe.
You came in and testified.
Because you were talking about engaging the business leaders with the legislative leaders, right. And at the time, I was in business. I am in the same business when I'm not here. And you were in the legislature serving on the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules.
Right.
And we had run into so many problems with the regulations for our industry in home care, which were abysmal. And you may remember that the thing that really frustrated me the most was that you guys in the legislature had done your job and created this wonderful legislative framework. Mm-hmm. And the Department of Health had sat for 13 years without making any revisions to the regs to be in line with the law that you'd already passed. Right. So we had to sort of jerk their chain and get them moved off center, which we were able to do, right. And it was great. But being involved in that process is what opened the door for me to run in the first place, because by the time I got through with the revision of the regulations, I had gotten to know so many of you guys and was involved in the political process so much more, and looking around for people who resonated with what the business community needed, that when William Fralin decided that he wasn't going to run again and he was my delegate, I decided to run.
Yeah, I thought it was great to see you in the halls afterwards, because William and I got out at the same time, the same year, along with Clark Hogan and some other folks, and it really lifted me up to see you come back and want to get engaged at a deeper level. And I would always say to you, I remember you from your JCAR testimony and how important regulations are in our process and government. People don't look at it as much as they should. The regulatory environment is really important when it comes to governing. And so it was great to see you there. And I remember one time you got off the elevator, and I was getting on the elevator as the old General Assembly building, which is now in landfills all around the Commonwealth probably. And I said, you know what the key to success here in the General Assembly is? And you go, what? I'm like, it needs a budget amendment. Yeah. Right? Whatever
right.
It's doing.
First year you tell me this, and that's true. And everybody thinks
I just saved you 5 years.
You did. And it's true. And the thing that's interesting, too, is the process for change is so incredibly slow.
Yep.
And that is real frustrating until you figure out that that's really by design.
Yeah, the framers had it right.
Had it right because we do things. If you do things recklessly, I mean, we can fix it. Right. There's. I think the slowest process certainly is amending the Constitution, which I don't want to really talk about. But the fact that it takes so much of an effort to do it.
Well, it should, because these are the rules.
Right, and these are the ones that this is hard and fast rules, and if you don't do it absolutely right, it can cause great havoc. And once you've made the change,
very badly, very quickly,
undoing that is incredibly hard, and undoing legislation is hard because things go haywire, and it really is tough. But when and it's funny, I think it took several years for it to really sink in to me, and this is sad to admit, but I came in here awestruck with where I was and the body that I was getting to serve in, because serving, I think anytime you're elected by the people to serve in any capacity, that's an incredible honor. It's just an incredible honor.
It's an incredible honor. It kind of makes you step back and go,
you put your faith in me, right? To be served in a legislative body is up a notch from that of people have really put a lot of trust in you, because you're going to make the rules and the regulations and the laws that they are going to live under.
Right.
So a state legislature is a tremendous honor in any state. This one, in particular,
because it's Virginia. And we have an election every year.
We've been doing this so many years. I mean, when you look at the list, and for me, riding along in the car and talking with Rob Bell, and when he really drilled it into me as I was driving in for like the first meeting after the election, and he said, your name is now on the roster with, it runs through the whole litany of founding fathers. And when you say Patrick Henry and Thomas Jefferson, go back to the House of Burgesses, George Washington, Daniel Boone. I mean, these are names that it's like, and then you got some little knucklehead who grew up in North Georgia who landed here. What am I doing here?
Right. Well, that's the whole beauty of the citizen legislature, and why it's so important to get it right.
Well, exactly.
And to be above board and do it the right way.
So there's that. You start with this being awestruck with where you are.
How was day two after the awe left you and you met everybody else? You're I'm just like everybody else.
Well, I'll tell you, the awe, if it ever leaves, I got to stop.
You're still struck by it.
I am.
Good for you.
I walk in. I walked by the George Washington statue the day of the inauguration this year. My wife and I came in early because we were was doing the national anthem with John Cosgrove,
which was fantastic, by the way. Well, for those of you who don't know the inaugural festivities, Delegate Head and Senator John Cosgrove performed the national anthem, and it was stirring.
Well, thank you. But we came in to do the sound check early that morning. And all the stuff was decorated, and we came in through all the security checks and things, and walked up the steps onto the platform, and then just stepped in through those main doors, which aren't usually unlocked from the outside. Right. And just stepped in and saw the flowers and the Washington statue. And it just and again it catches in my chest every time to look at that and go, this is important. This is overwhelming. And that's really, really important. All of that to say, though, it took several years for the weight of what we do here to really sink in, that we're making law, and we better by golly get that right too. And working through the process, I've got a bill that I was chief co-patron on this year with Dolores McQuinn. We're not usually allies
for our audience,
on some things.
For our audience, explain who Delegate McQuinn is.
She is a member of the Black Caucus. She's a Democrat, and she is a wonderful lady, and she and I have been friends since we got here. We are on opposite sides of issues most of the time, but she had a bill this year dealing with implicit bias training for health care. And even though that sounds like something other than what it actually is, it's an important issue and something that I had gotten to know something about prior to her filing the bill. And I went to her and I said, we need to work on this. And the Interfaith Council was who sponsored the bill. The process in that this year, and I've got a meeting later today with the lady from the Interfaith Council to try to explain to her again, this really is, we did move the ball forward. We carried the bill over to next year with asking the Department of Health Professions to study it and give us the framework of what training should be like for physicians as they're getting relicensed, to be aware of this. And that's all the bill was supposed to do. Okay. But we carried it over because we needed to have their input to get it right.
You just need more time to get it right.
And the second thing was, we could have done it this year. If we had gotten it right and gotten it done this year, licensure for physicians happens every other year. And this is the year that they would do it. So it wouldn't even go into effect until next year. Right. And so we'll have it, we'll get a chance to
because
really
for our
get it
audience,
right.
the bills don't take effect until July 1st unless there's an emergency clause in which they take immediate effect. Still, in this case, it would not have any impact.
It wouldn't have
Zero
had a chance.
impact.
There's no way to have made it happen. But what we're able to do is carry it over, get more eyeballs on it, get the administrations weigh in on it, and make sure that by the time we come back next year, we've got something that will slide through without any kind of controversy. We'll have it absolutely right, and it will take effect in the same length of time, but it will be better than what it would have been if we'd have passed the bill this year.
Absolutely. And so working with both sides to get it done, and no one gets upset about it.
The right way.
And how much of your work, and tell the audience, how much of your work is actually that kind of process that goes on here?
Oh, probably 80%.
And the 20% is what we focus on.
Right. And
that's grown in my day from probably 95% of just the bill mill that you go through. You just constantly run the mill.
Well, and you've always got because we're a Dillon's Rule state, you'll have always the bill so that Newport News can cut the grass on a vacant lot.
Explain Dillon Rule for the audience.
Dillon Rule, you've got two types of state governance. You have Dillon's Rule and Home Rule.
Right.
And a Home Rule, I grew up in Georgia, again, so it's a Home Rule state, which means that a locality can do whatever it wants to do unless the legislature says, no, you can't do that.
Right.
Dillon's Rule state is exactly the opposite. In a Dillon's Rule state, you assume that all of the localities are a subset of the state, in which case they are not allowed to do anything unless we specifically tell them they can do.
Which is why we have so many bills.
Having been in both, sometimes I'm a big fan of Home Rule, and wish we didn't have to go through this mess. Sometimes I'm a huge fan of Dillon's Rule because there are some localities on both sides that, for whatever issue, would end up running off.
And as you can imagine, from the business community's perspective, we prefer the Dillon Rule to Home Rule because
it keeps everything
uniformity across the state.
Right.
Because we have so many jurisdictions, and now we have independent cities inside of counties, and running your businesses with these different competing rules would be very difficult.
That was a hard thing. And my business is a franchise. The fact that independent cities are independent of the counties, when our franchise agreement was drawing up the geography that we had to be in, and they kept sending it back to me and say, and you're going to have Roanoke County and Botetourt County, and I kept sending it back and saying, and the city of Salem and the city of Roanoke, and they kept saying, but it's inside the county, and I kept saying, no, it's not.
No, it's
and they
not.
said,
It's
but
the
it is.
only state in the union.
No, it's not. You don't understand.
Well, and that's one of the you mentioned going slow and getting it right. Changing the rules is very important. And now you're proposing to the citizens of a newly formed Senate district that you would like to represent them in the slower body, let's be honest. And I have become a fan over time, and as painful as it is for me to admit, Delegate Chris Head, as a former delegate, the Senate, sometimes they're right, you know. But because they can go, hang on a tick, the faster, more exuberant body wants to get this done. Let's slow things down. We don't quite need that just yet. Let's take a longer view of things. And that's the balance the framers drew in.
Senators are much quicker to be the ones to say, we've been at this for over 400 years and we've managed to do just fine without this. I think we can wait one more year.
Yeah, the cake is just not baked.
Not quite. Let's get it right.
And that's important.
But it's also...
We've seen it in Washington, D.C., and why I'm so adamant that the filibuster must maintain it.
Oh my gosh!
If we lost the filibuster,
we're done.
I think as a republic, we're done.
We are done.
It's mob rule.
Well, and I mean, you can't. You've got to have some way to tap the brakes and be deliberative, because again, this really is important. And undoing something is way, way harder than doing it.
And I think the Democrats in Washington understand that now because of what they did to change judicial nominations. And all of a sudden, you got three Supreme Court justices, and boom, the court's very different because you changed the rules.
Mitch McConnell, I remember very much when he was saying to Harry Reid,
"Y'all going to regret
don't do this.
You don't want to do
this.
That.
Will come back and bite you." And then it, it did.
In that context, do you think it's important to go back to an emergency clause and have a supermajority that the Democrats took off during COVID, and Republicans didn't put it back in the House rules, and so now we're back to majority amendment on emergency clauses? We've seen that in the mask mandate.
Honestly, we would never have gotten it done any other way.
And that's part of the point.
But the difference is the rules are if it comes down from the governor, because part of the reason for the emergency clause is we're telling the governor we want you to sign this, and we want it to go into effect right now.
Right.
And I mean, arguably, we want everything to go into effect right now because we're telling you that this is what we want.
Right.
But you've got we're going to let it take a few months to get everybody lined up. But these are when we're sending you any piece of legislation, we're directing you what we want done, and then you've got to concur with that. If the governor, in this case, because you've now blended branches in cooperation with each other, if the governor sends it back and says, I agree with you, not only do I agree with you, but I want this done now.
And that's only a majority?
That's only a majority vote.
It used to be 80%,
It used to be 80% all the way around, and now it's a majority vote for that. And there's precedent. There is. That's not going to get done very often. It really is not going to get done very often. In this particular
But it goes
case,
to the central point of once you change the rules and you take your hand off that chess piece and you go, oh, that's my move.
Yeah.
Okay, the whole game just changed.
That's right.
It's like expanding the strike zone in baseball.
That's right.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal, and shrinking it back down again is also a big deal and very
far more
difficult
difficult.
to do.
Far
Very difficult.
Far more difficult to undo.
Right. But what it also does is sets you up if you're not careful with it. The tit for tat kind of responses that you end up getting, if we're not careful, end up turning this into just a sandlot, fight.
Right.
If we're not real careful, and we don't need our legislation to be that way, because we could very easily. What is it, Malaysia, that you end up seeing on the news every now and again, where they just honestly the whole thing in suits and ties, and they are just in fist fights on the floor of their legislature.
And we look at it and go, "What? That's crazy."
Well,
but we used to do it.
Hey,
we used to have those moments, not a lot, and democracy's new to that culture.
Well, it is, and you have to sort it all out. I mean, we have Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton kind of got after it, as a result of similar things. Right. So, we don't do that anymore. That's a good thing. I'm glad dueling is not. I'm not sure.
But you've had moments of passion, I would imagine, like I did when you're on the floor.
I'm a pretty good shot, but I'm not sure. You care
about a piece of legislation, you go,
yeah.
Damn it! I really wanted it this time.
Yeah, and there's
you got to go back and do your work.
Well, okay, like the constitutional amendment for JCAR, giving JCAR the authority to suspend rules. That's going to require. I still think that's a really, really good thing. Morgan Griffith carried that constitutional amendment, which you have to, for anything to change the Constitution, you've got to run through. For folks that don't know, you've got to pass with the resolution, have an election, come back with the identical resolution with not a comma changed. And then it goes out to the voters, and the voters get to decide. It's very, very hard to change the Constitution. Undoing it would have to go through the same process. Right. Very difficult. It takes many years sometimes to get it through. This constitutional amendment would give the Joint Commission on Administrative Rules the authority, if rules are found out to be out of phase, if regulations are found to be out of phase with the underlying legislation, they could suspend them until the legislature had a chance to come back into session and work through it to correct anything.
And that was the reason why we created JCAR.
Right, and that was my interaction with that was exactly for that reason. And we needed to be able to do it, but you didn't have the constitutional authority to do it. Morgan Griffith carried that amendment for several years. After he left, Greg Habib carried it, and then I carried it twice. I finally got it through the first time.
When was this?
This was 4 years ago.
Okay, I think I remember.
And then we had an election, and we came back, and I couldn't get it out.
Then the people,
the
people ruled.
And the people ruled, and we couldn't get it out of the house again. And so
that's the amazing thing, is that we have a great idea, and we think it makes a lot of sense, and the process makes sure that the rest of the people understand what we're going to do to change just the basic rules.
And so on that one, my plan is to bring something back modified, hoping that I can have figured out what irritates.
Once it's defeated in that original form, can it come back in that same form?
It's been in exactly the same form every time it's been
introduced. But once it's been defeated.
But once it's been defeated, well, it was never defeated. It just we didn't never vote on it.
Okay.
The second time.
Okay. So it didn't go to the people. Okay.
Right.
Let's move to your upcoming election, 2023. You just recently announced in the last week or so that you intend to put yourself up for consideration by the new Senate district in Senate District 3, which is the new district, redistricting, which includes a lot of my old district back in the Shenandoah Valley, including my hometown of Stanton. Why do you want to move to the slower body? Are you getting older? Is this a thing?
Well,
You're getting more thoughtful in your
little more deliberative.
aging.
I'm a grandfather now.
Oh, that's what it is.
That's it.
You're slowing down.
I need to slow down.
You want the extra $300 a year? You want to bump up to $18,000?
That's
that $300 kicker, isn't it?
That played into it a little bit, maybe.
And it should, because $300 goes a long way. You can almost fill up a tank of gas.
You can actually, maybe twice.
Maybe
twice. Well, depending by the time we get around to that. But no, in looking at it with redistricting, I was in favor of how we did redistricting this year, and people talk about what a train wreck it was. It really.
I think it worked.
I think it worked.
I mean, not everyone's happy.
You're not
supposed to be happy.
I don't like the fact that I didn't have a district anymore by myself. But if you look at what the lines look like compared to what the current lines look like, people have got to.
The job was eventually done.
Okay, right, and
these are fairer districts than before. Correct.
The thing that made it break down was the committee, and it was as much the legislators as anybody else. Just could not deal with the fact that they had to do it this way, and so that's when it caved in and it went to the Supreme Court. But as a
businessman who went through the legislative process and regulatory and regulations hurting your business, and I looked at the redistricting process, and I said to someone, I can't remember who it was. I said, if politicians gave this much of a crap about our jobs as they do about their own jobs, how much better off would our economy be?
Well,
because redistricting, like everyone, a legislator goes all in to protect their districts. Well, what do you think we do every day in business?
Right, and it's here's the thing too is I think in a citizen legislature like this where it's part-time, if you define yourself by the job it's not.
It pays part-time.
But if you define yourself by being in this role, if I am defined as being Delegate Chris Head, or hopefully someday Senator Chris Head, if I'm defined by that, that's bad. That's really bad.
As your source of personal identity?
If that becomes how I see myself only and how I find my fulfillment in life, right. This is a fulfilling job, but it's in service to the people of the Commonwealth. And if it's anything other than that, then we've got a you got a problem. I got a problem because you look at things the wrong way.
That's where you can get over your skis in politics, where you think it's all about you.
Well,
and it's not. It's all about
to do.
It's very easy to do. Because you walk out that door, everyone's, oh, you're the greatest. You're so funny. I love your bill. Tell us more how
important. You are so important.
Tell us how great you really are.
The funny thing too, and I've said this a couple of times the last couple of days. I said, you grow up, and I didn't grow up in a very Christian home. I am a Christian. I'm an ordained minister. My first career was in vocational ministry, and my wife as well. And we've been in business together, taking care of seniors, which we view as a ministry as well. That's how and humility is such a central part of that.
Right.
And then here I am in politics, which if you don't have some at least pretty strong self-confidence and a thick skin, you cannot survive in this game at all. You just can't do it.
I have a saying along the humility lines. I think in politics or in life especially, either you should be humble or you will be humbled.
Be humbled. But this is a group of people where all of us, we tend to be the folks that if we were given a humility award, the first thing we would do is pin it on and show it off.
Tweet.
Right. I just need to get this out there because, but I'm so humble. So
I wouldn't even take my picture.
You have to be careful. You have to be careful with this kind of thing. But as far as what led to the decision to go to the Senate and looking over the district, I was districted in with Terry Austin, who's been a friend of mine for a long time.
And we're seeing that.
And
almost half the General Assembly is now in districts with other members.
And
half the General Assembly.
So the new district that I'm in, from my old district, had one precinct transferred over, and it happened to be the precinct that I live in.
So everything else
is brand new to me, right?
So
like, well, okay, and that's fine because I know a lot of people up there, and
sure.
And I thought, well, Terry and I could run in a primary, and we could, then one of us is not going to be here, and the reality is, I think we both bring a lot of value to the General Assembly and different strengths, and we vote differently sometimes. Terry's a little bit left of me. I'm a little bit right of Terry, but I mean,
marginal
not a lot. Right? It's just marginal. I mean, both of us way right of center. And so looking at that, and plus Terry's got he's chairman of transportation, he's vice chair of appropriations.
Which is really good for
That's
rural
really
parts
good
of
for the
Virginia.
region, right? Really good for the region. And thought, well, what would be the best thing to do? And then you start looking at this new Senate district, and
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that district.
I mean, the majority of my existing House district, the current one, is in this new Senate district.
Okay.
So I lose the southern part of Roanoke County that I currently have, and I lose the little bit of Roanoke City that I currently have, but the rest of Roanoke County is in this new district.
So you have Roanoke County. You go right up the 81 spine.
Right, straight up, right up through the valley, all the way to.
So you have northern Roanoke County, Botetourt,
all of Botetourt, all of Craig,
all of Craig,
all of Allegheny, all of Rockbridge,
all of Rockbridge,
which includes now, back to Allegheny, you've got now the city of Covington, city of Lexington, city of Buena Vista.
It's a massive district.
And then you've got about a third of Augusta
County.
And all of Stanton and all of Waynesboro.
So you have all from Stewart's Draft on over that whole area.
That whole swing there over to Stanton, and then everything just straight down from there. So it's a big district. Has to be to get the population up to.
But again, it's a compact, contiguous district.
It is.
And
it doesn't have the
Constitution Amendment called for.
Bulbous looks that some of
right.
I mean, you get some crazy looking stuff right now in the way that they were drawn the last time around. So from that standpoint, this is a much better shot at getting it right. And then I've got a big chunk of my existing district with people that know me, and it's an open seat. So it's not like I'm running.
How many people in that district now?
Somebody,
What's the Senate district these days?
250, 260. I'd have to look up, but
wow.
Roughly 250,000 people.
And it's almost a third of it's more than almost half of a congressional district.
Well, but the congressional districts are now 850,000. So
wow. Okay. So no.
So it's it's about a third,
wow.
and so which again makes sense. So it just looked like it was going to make a lot of sense to do this. Plus the fact that the district has a lot of diversity in it and independent communities that are going to need to be represented.
Absolutely. Another district well. But you're talking about independent cities. You're talking about higher education up and down the
all the way
corridor.
up and down.
You got massive agriculture. Is massive.
Which I'm thrilled with to have more of that than I've got in my current district. I grew up on a farm that didn't farm by the time I was born.
Right.
We leased the land out, but I still grew up in a very
transportation's huge in that district.
Transportation's massively huge. I mean, all of the things that are important issues and the stuff that I've been working on. Business development is massively huge to be able to keep it relevant and getting workforce development there, making sure that our young people have opportunities to stay when they graduate from high school.
And I'm glad you said that because I can't tell you the number of times, Chris, I would talk to parents in those districts and they would just openly weep, knowing full well their kids, when they go off to college, they're not coming back.
They're not coming home.
So all the taxpayers chunk in all that money for K through 12 funding and invest in people who don't come back. It's a bad investment. Unless we can retain
it.
That
and we've
talent.
got to. Yes, part of the reason I've been so thrilled with some of where the governor is going on his focus of workforce development and a real emphasis on career and technical and leveling that with baccalaureate degrees.
It's so important for those localities to say
they're not mutually
invite these kids
exclusive
back.
either.
They got to bring these kids back because when the families break down, that's that slow erosion in our culture that I think is defining our society as we become further and further disintegrated from each other. And I think we lose that as a people, how important it is to be around your family and your friends that you grew up with and have that cohesive community. I just went to a funeral of a friend of mine who killed himself a couple weeks ago. And
so sorry.
Yeah, thanks. He lost the battle, right? I'm sure you've seen it plenty of times. We see it all too much in our society. But when I went to the funeral and saw the community there, that was the heartwarming thing, that people were truly there to help the family get through this. And a lot of people are still angry at that reality, but the people showed up and they were there to get together. And there was this, and there's this sense of importance that we are all in this together when you go to those moments.
Well, the level of community, and of course, now you have the benefit, and it really is. I'm envious that you have the place that you grew up close by. I'm still very close to people from where I grew up.
Right.
I've been a Virginian for nearly 35 years. Moved here when I.
So you'll get your degree soon. You're close, but
Well,
you're not there
my
yet.
heritage traces from here. I've got family that goes all the way back.
But you're really not.
But yeah,
35 is close though.
yeah. Well, but my kids were all born here, and and so they're So but my wife and
It's
I
a Virginia
moved here.
joke. Just get over it. It's a Virginia joke.
My wife and I moved here. It helps. We moved here in '89.
Okay.
We got married. She moved here in '88, and she was the Baptist campus minister at Longwood and Hampton, Sydney.
Okay.
And I moved up to marry her because those jobs are few and far between.
Right.
And Heritage Baptist Church in Farmville hired me to be their minister of music and youth, and so I left the church I was in Georgia and came up here. And that's where we thought we were going to be vocationally, and we kept thinking about wanting to go home. Right. Someday we'll go home.
Sure.
This will be a temporary thing. And then one thing led to another, and I left the church position and was working for a Fortune 100 company, and they transferred me to Roanoke. And we had 2 kids, and she was feeling a need to be a stay-at-home mom at the time. We got to Roanoke, and we sort of settled into the valley, and feeling that, and we stopped talking about going home because we were home.
Roanoke is a wonderful.
It's a wonderful place, but it's the whole of the valley, and that goes to this whole district. This whole district runs that way. Part of the reason it does. Think about how much railroad emphasis you've got in the whole area, with all just right up through there. A large part of the development of this has been brought about over the years by railroads, and we're talking about a section of the Commonwealth that up until probably 30 years ago was the economic driving force. I mean, really
the breadbasket of Virginia.
Really running. I mean, if you look Winchester all the way down to Danville, that and west was where the economic stability.
Because it's agricultural based. It's very stable, very dependable.
And this is it. But you had so much of an understanding that with the railroad development too, to move the commerce through, and then the development of I-81, sort of transitioned over and coupled with that over the years, you get used to people being here that aren't from here, but they're going to be here. And some small town areas don't do that well in some parts of the country. Here,
it's very stable.
It's very open and love, and I've
always
said
has been.
It's an amazing thing to me that the people of the 17th district would take a guy that's not from here but who loves this place.
I get
and
that.
they keep sending me back to represent them.
Oh, I the same way.
The whole district, and I really, I'm looking so forward to getting deeply to know. I know a lot of people up through the whole district, but just so looking forward to getting up and getting to know more deeply the people in the communities that I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you.
Relationships is what life is about.
It's what it's all about. And my dad's been in his house for 43 years, and I guarantee you, someone in my hometown of Stanton will refer to our house that I grew up in 43 years.
House.
No, as the Sherrill House.
Oh, the Sherrill House. Oh, yeah.
Because he wasn't the original owner of it. He didn't build it. 1979. I guarantee you, they still call
but it's the Sherrill House.
No, ours was the Sherrill House. Charlotte Burnett's house. I grew up in my kids grew up in the Sherrill house. Dad grew up, he bought the Burnett house. Anyway, 43 years. It's an amazing run that you could also have that construct. It's not quite yours yet. And that's one of the wonderful things about the Valley. And I'll never forget, probably someone you know very well in Roanoke, Trixie Averill, longtime GOP.
Dear friend.
In 2001, the weekend before the election, Mark Early's the candidate for Republicans for governor at Turner Ashby High School. His bagman is Jonathan Martin of the New York Times. And he was the body guy.
Okay.
He's a reporter. We're standing at this football game, and he's getting a big ovation from the folks in Turner Ashby, which is outside of Bridgewater,
right,
which has had the most recent tragedy of the 2 police officers being killed. And Trixie goes, Chris, what's that smell? I was like, what are you talking about, Trixie? And she's like, well, it smells like manure. And I was like, where do you think you are?
Yeah.
I go, and she goes, oh, and I'm like, and we don't pronounce it manure here, we pronounce it Monet. That's cold hard cash right there. This is an agricultural district. And she's like, oh, I'm like, yeah.
Well,
it's one of those things. She's like, oh.
The thing is, you got lots of different kinds of Monet in
right. Yeah, be careful with that Monet too.
Yes, you do. In Senate District 3, what I grew up, I'm a North Georgia native, and we had cows and pigs, but mostly we had chickens.
And that's
and you get up in the northern end of things here. That's what you got here too. So there's also for me. I mean, it is it's part of the reason I feel so comfortable with this district and thinking I think I can probably do this for them because I'm from you got the higher ed stuff. I'm a Georgia grad. I'm in the arts community is so big. I was a music major. I've done theater and all the other kind of stuff there. But I also have shoveled out. I've raked out chicken houses too. And
you have a diverse background. Delegate has a diverse background. What do you think are going to be the deciding issues in that nomination? I mean, first of all, you have to have a contest.
We have a contest.
It's a Republican district. Let's just be honest.
I think for the contest, it's going to come down to who can people connect with, and who do they trust to represent them the way that they want to be represented. It is. I mean, let's face it. This is a very, very conservative district. I'm a pretty conservative guy,
But geographically, where's the population? Is it pretty well distributed?
You've got the two population centers are you've got the biggest group is in the Roanoke-Botetourt area. That's the biggest chunk there, right. And then close to that is the Augusta, Stanton, Waynesboro.
Okay.
And then
so it's like a barbell basically.
Right. And the rest of it is just evenly distributed down through the rest of the valley. And but again, the whole area pretty conservative. There are a couple of pockets of
enclaves
that are not so much. But even there, it's not wildly leftist. It's a reasonable. Even in the left-leaning places, it's a little bit more reasonable in.
But not the nominations. I mean, once you win the nomination, that's the lock.
Yeah, the nomination should be.
What's the Republican Democrat breakdown of that district?
It's about a 62% Republican district.
Oh, so the nomination's everything.
It is really important. But I think what they're going to be looking for is, are you going to stand for what you say you did? This was really an interesting exercise because I hadn't done this until getting ready to make the announcement for Senate. My legislative aide pulled back up my announcement speech from when I first announced for the House of Delegates 11 years ago.
Smart.
And I went back and watched the whole speech again. And Chris, I got to tell you, it was. I was laying in bed with in the hotel room here watching that, and my wife was with me last week, and I was sitting there and I got through, and she was reading something, and I was watching this thing, and I got through, and I said, it was a pretty good speech. Even if I do say so myself, that was a pretty good speech. And then I went back and started taking notes on what I'd said, and I said in there, if you will elect me, right, I will do these things.
Did you do them?
And then looking back over the 10-year record, I've done what I said I would do, which was, look after conservative values, make sure that our constitutional rights are protected, make sure that business is being protected and developed, make sure that government gets out of our way, do what we can to reduce spending and make sure the taxes are staying low, try to make sure that educational opportunities are there, champion the workforce development that I've talked about. I've done all of those things. We haven't finished the task, but we've moved the ball forward over the last 10 years. And
I have to say, you haven't aged a bit in 11 years. I think you look like the same guy who came into the committee years ago.
You are very, very kind. The wrinkles are a little bit more deep, and the gray hair is a little bit.
Because I'm getting older too.
And I'm older than you are. Not by much, but I'm older.
Well, then I'm truly embarrassed because you look younger.
The one thing I do want to think, going forward too, we need to reconstitute the caucus that you did, because I did
the cost-cutting caucus.
The cost-cutting caucus.
That was Alan Louderback was the predecessor for Todd Gilbert.
And we did the business development caucus when I came in.
Mike Watson and you.
Mike Watson and me and Michael Webert and David Ramadan, and the four of us did the business development caucus. And now Webert and I, the last two remaining, we've continued to work through that. And matter of fact, one of his bills this year was continuing to roll back regulation. It was stuff that we've been working on for a decade, and this governor is actually going to sign it, which we're pretty excited about. But this is really, really important stuff. But I was looking back over and stumbled up on the cost-cutting caucus, and I thought, now we need to start really drilling down on
even
some
though
of
it was
this
very
too.
alliterative, cost-cutting caucus, it was designed to be a reform-oriented caucus where we would try to bring reforms to state government to reduce the total expenditures by the government by producing better results.
One of the examples, workforce development. We talk about this all the time. Workforce development. We've got so many programs, and I was on the transition team for the Health and Human Resources Secretariat, so we didn't really get into the commerce and trade elements of things, but. The drilling down into all of the secretariats and looking at things and realizing that state government does all of these things in silos that don't talk to each other ever. And it drives me, because again, from our businesses,
the business community does the same thing.
But
they all get siloed up.
But in our individual businesses, we don't do that. You can't afford to do that.
No, not individual businesses.
You have to.
But when they come down here, all the different groups are all grouped up.
It's
just
and they
massive
in
silos.
And from a workforce development standpoint,
we gotta
find a way to let there be some sort of cross-pollination there.
Absolutely.
And that again would allow us to spend, because we end up spending the same money to do the same thing repeatedly, and we get such minimal results. If we could begin to just lump some of these things into one big program, still break it down for individual communities, still break it down for individual things, but manage it sort of overall.
One of the things I find in politics and in life and business is the duplication of effort and the triplication of effort. Everyone has these great ideas. They go out and do it, but they just don't get together and actually cut across the silos to do it in a coordinated fashion.
Well, and everybody wants their own pet project to go because they want to get, there goes back to that humility award again.
And they want to get funding for it.
They want to get their thing so they can say that they're the ones that did it. And one of my favorite Reagan lines was, there's no end to how much good you can accomplish as long as you don't care who gets the credit.
That's right. The law of unintended consequences.
And you've got to be able to, if we're really going to get it done, we've got to be willing to say, you know what, you carry that bill.
All right.
I'll sign on.
I appreciate Chris Head joining us, Delegate Chris Head from Roanoke County, now running in the Senate District number 3, which is the Shenandoah Valley, largely from Roanoke up to Stanton and Waynesboro. Wishing him all the very best. Not an endorsement, obviously. We can't do that here. But I do wish everyone who runs for office the very best, because we need to encourage more people to run for office in this country. We put a lot on them, and then we all of a sudden take them down, tear them down. It's like this weird sport that we have in this country, that we want people to run for office, and as soon as they get in there, we start tearing them down. That's one of the reasons why we put on this show, this podcast brought to you by VCTA, the Broadband Association of Virginia and Virginia Free, so that you can see our elected officials in a different light, more personal, up close. And we didn't get into all the good things that Chris Head does or who he is personally. Hopefully do that some other time. No, let's do it. Let's do it now. What the hell? Favorite books?
The Bible.
Which one? Which book in the Bible stands out for you?
Proverbs. I
Okay.
spend more time in Proverbs than anything else.
Okay.
The Gospels hold everything together.
Sure.
But the Pauline Epistles, 1 Timothy 1:15, I come back to repeatedly to stay grounded, because Paul says, here's a trustworthy saying that deserves full acceptance.
Best
that Christ died for sinners, of whom I am the worst.
Best verse in the Bible. What's your favorite?
John 3:16.
Okay.
Karl Barth said it's the gospel in miniature.
Okay. Did he? Karl Marx said that.
Karl Barth.
Karl Barth, not that Marx. We're in that Marxist.
No. Although Marx did study theology, he was, that he just.
Favorite movie? If you had to come and watch a movie tonight, what would it be?
Ocean's 11.
Really?
Yeah,
This is the great thing about
the remake.
You learn so much about people.
The remake. I have more fun watching that movie.
The new one with Brad Pitt and
George Clooney and that crew. The original is really, really good, but it's a bunch of rogues that are just, it's just so, there's so many great lines in that movie.
Favorite TV shows?
Oh, gee, going way back, MASH.
Okay.
I'm Downton Abbey. My wife and I are big fans. We're almost through watching.
Favorite character in Downton Abbey?
Lord Grantham.
You and Jennifer Boysko would get along on this one. We talked
Who
about
else?
She's a big fan of Downton Abbey too.
Yeah.
Favorite sports teams? Don't let us down.
I'm a Georgia Bulldog. I'm a Georgia Bulldog. I went to Georgia. I was at Georgia.
You went to Georgia.
I was a freshman
That's
at Georgia. I was a freshman at Georgia with Herschel Walker when we were national champions, never dreaming that it would be 41 years later until we were national champions again. And
that's legit. That's legit.
And this was a
football
fun
team's
season.
favorite professional teams.
I grew up just outside of Atlanta in the 60s and 70s.
Ooh,
so
brutal years.
I don't do pro sports because we
didn't have any.
We finished dead. No, we had them. We were just
I know
dead
you didn't
last
have any.
in every league, at that time. The Braves didn't get good until I was already married and won their first World Series after I was already a Virginian. And it was like, where did you come from?
Those years.
All
suffering.
those years. Yeah, I have. But. Football, again, right now I was pulling for the Rams on the Super Bowl, but that's because Matt Stafford went to Georgia.
One of our camera people is a big Bengals fan, so we kidded him a lot. And it's great to have you on, Chris, and we wish you the very best and all you're doing today in the General Assembly. Join us again next time on the VIP podcast, available on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Thanks for joining us.